actually a planning commission meeting, but it's really a public hearing and, or, I mean, a public participation meeting, so. So I gotta cover myself because of the perfunctory stuff with the planning commission. I'm gonna call a roll call on the planning commission members, there you go. So Al Wheeler, I'm here, AJ Fisker,
Present.
she's there, Matt Schote. Here. Eric Belcheff. Here. And Summer Schneller.
Here.
There we go, all right, so you know that we've got a full house in terms of the members, and so here we go. But really, as I said, really the purpose tonight is to talk about the visioning project for the Linden Avenue site. And the most important thing from my standpoint is that everybody gets a chance to offer their ideas, have questions answered. And so it's from my standpoint, it's really important that we use tonight to make sure we know what's going on, and people really have the unusual questions, please answer them. But there's really three things that are gonna happen. One of them, I'm gonna give a few opening remarks. Then I'm going to introduce the consultant who is doing the work on behalf of the borough regarding this project. And then finally, we open the floor. And sometimes Crafton has been using sort of a 3-minute clock to hear from people. I'd like not to do the 3-minute clock. Instead, just folks who have questions or want to make comments, like raise your hand at the end. And we'll acknowledge you. It's all very long. I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance who wants to ask a question or make a comment, gets a chance to do that. So I may kind of wave my hand if you could kind of wrap up if it gets long, but other than that, let's have a kind of a good open session. Okay, so let's talk about this project. As I say, it's really the beginning of a visioning effort and the beginning of a public engagement process. So it's not a one meeting tonight and you're done at all, and you're going to hear more about the study elements from our consultant here in just a few minutes. This is a site, the Linden Avenue site, which is obviously bounded by Steuben and Linden. It's a total of 5¼ acres. It's actually has combined ownership because 1¼ acres was deeded back almost 27 years ago to Crafton. So Crafton actually owns 1¼ of those acres, and the remaining 4 are owned by the school board. The school board, as many of you know, 7 or 8 years ago, was interested in trying to sell the property. Got offers of a total of around $3.5 million for the site. One of the primary uses was for a gas station. Nobody seemed to want that. That was rejected, and so here we are. Nothing has happened on the site since then. So it remains a ball field. It remains the miniature golf facility and so forth. So one of the factors that at least the school board would be interested in is what would be the value of this site if they want to resell it. They do want to consider reselling, but so that is a factor. Another factor is, this land is currently used for municipal and school purposes, so it's not taxable. It's not under the tax rules. So should it be a private development of some kind that would generate tax? Yes or no? That's another question sort of up in the air. But to be honest with you, the most important of all those issues is what should it be? And that's really hopefully where you folks come in and others who want to weigh in with different ideas about what we really should consider. When I say we, on behalf of the borough, through their consultant, we'll go through a process to try to make sure we hear everybody's ideas and then have subsequent discussions about what those impacts are and what it might look like, and to hear what people's thoughts are after you go through that process. In addition to that, if the end result of this visioning effort, it's a joint effort, I should have mentioned up front. The school board, with Crafton's urging, did not proceed with the gas station. So nothing's happened except Crafton and the school board have talked and said, let's do this visioning thing jointly. So they are both supporting of this effort. So whatever comes out of that, currently the site is zoned CR, which means community residential, which means multifamily. Planning commission at the last time, the zoning code was up, they did not change that designation, partly because they didn't know what was gonna be the result of the whole discussion about Linden. And so, if whatever the vision turns out to be is something other than community residential, it doesn't quite fit.
When did they change it to community residential?
It was in community residential when the zoning code was updated,
What year was that?
2025.
Never happened. Never happened. It's not community residential.
No,
No, it's not.
No, but the designation is on the zoning code map. I'd be happy to provide it to you to make sure you know. Okay? Currently it's an athletic field and a miniature ball, so it doesn't, it doesn't fit that designation, but that is the way it's zoned right now. And that may, the point of it is, whatever comes out of this activity, it may not fit that designation at all. At that point, we would have to go back, whatever that vision is, would have to go back for discussion by the planning commission to see what zoning designation would make sense for. So at this point, I think everything is on the table, and it could turn out to be something else depending on what the ultimate recommendations. Okay? But again, if there's confusion about what it's zoned now, I'd be happy to make sure you get the copy of that.
That's not how it's listed on the county website.
On where?
On the county website. It's not listed as the community residential.
If you look at Crafton's website, you'll see it. But I'd be happy to make sure you get a copy so we make sure it's clear. In some ways it doesn't matter because I think if the vision calls for something else, I think we need to be flexible and think about what it should be. So that's where we are. That's the starting of the process. We're very early. Consultant is a team of folks from a company called OHM Advisors that was engaged by the Crafton Borough. The project manager is a gentleman named Chris Riggert, and he's going to talk in just a second. Chris is not only the project manager for this project, he also is the office manager for the whole office of their group, which is down on Carson Street. With that, let me offer the floor to Chris, and at the end of Chris's presentation, he's going to entertain then the whole process back and forth of answering questions, and hopefully, and then ask for your comments. And if I need to help, I'll be happy to do that as well. Chris.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. I'll turn this only slightly so that the Zoom folks don't have to look at the bald spot on the back of my head. Thanks, Al, for the introduction. Like you said, I'm a landscape architect, community planner, and manager of OHM Advisors Pittsburgh office. OHM Advisors is an integrated planning, design, and engineering firm. The way that we approach our work is to integrate our 11 disciplines so that we can help communities like Crafton thrive. The company has been in business since 1962. And amongst those qualifications, probably my most important qualification is I actually live in Ingram, just up the hill. So you could probably see me if you're driving on West Prospect, chasing my 2-year-old son. Just doing really good biking. Tonight's agenda is really a listening session and a community conversation. And so the room is set up right now with you guys all looking at me. But what I'd like to do is give a little bit of context for our discussion. And then we will allow folks to take the mic and share their perspective. And it's really amongst everybody in this room. You've got planning commissioners sort of mixed in amongst you. And so once we get to that point, raise your hand and we can bring the mic and make sure everybody hears you. Tonight's conversation is, as Al mentioned, focused on the site at the corner of Steuben and Linden. This is an important community asset. It has been there for quite some time as an important location within Crafton. And as a result, any type of visioning that happens needs to have a high level of community input to guide its future. As Al mentioned, there are some guardrails around the site and the school's disposition. And we'll talk through what those are.
Name and address.
And so as I give the context here, take this
name
from
would be great. I don't think we need an address. Name.
The conversation and what we have learned and what we are sharing with you. So at the end, we'll run through this. We'll have a conversation. My colleague Sydney is here. Raise your hand, Sydney. She will be feverishly writing down notes for us to take this feedback. We will then be working with the work group to refine a vision and come back to the community and share and test what those outcomes are. So this is not the last time that we will be having a conversation. So with that, let's go ahead and here we go. Flip to our project goal and purpose. So this is what we provided directly to the borough and school district as what our charge is on this project. To create a shared community informed vision that guides future development and decision making for the Linden Avenue site. And specifically, I will highlight that this does include concepts for future development. So that is what we have been brought in to explore. The approach is based on a few key principles to test realistic site alternatives, to make trade-offs clear, to build community consensus, and that starts this evening by listening to the discussion, create a clear process-driven outcome, and provide a flexible framework for action. So at the end of this process, what we will be delivering is a vision of what could happen on this site that's informed by the discussion that we've had this evening. It is not even at the end of this and this evening, the end product is not a promise. It's a vision. And that is a tool that the borough and the school district can use to help inform and make decisions on the site moving forward. So truly, I want to stress, this is a vision that is meant to be crafted within the community, and no decision should be made. Let's go to the next slide. This is the process we will be going through. A launch, which we did about a month ago. And I'll highlight, everybody should have one of these. If you don't, they're in the back. They are free, so feel free to grab one. We started with a launch process whereby we looked at past planning efforts that have happened in the community and pulled out feedback that has been provided in the past. So we are not starting from ground zero here. We're working from past planning efforts. We then move into a research and listening phase, which is what we're in right now. This is where we have studied the site, and that's what's in this document, but we're also listening to yourself. Ways to engage during this phase is to attend one of the 2 listening sessions. This is the first of 2. There will be another one in 2 weeks for folks who have not been able to attend. We will also be releasing a citizen survey so that people can fill out the survey, and there will be a series of focus groups and stakeholder interviews for civic leaders as well. From that, we will take the technical findings, the engagement findings, and we will help craft scenarios that appear feasible and come back to the community and through an open house, share those concepts for feedback and testing. And then the final stage, we will present that vision and it will be a public presentation that folks are available to attend. And all of this is going to be posted online. So if you have not been to the borough's website yet, there is a good site that's tracking with all the content, and this will be posted to that website after tonight's meeting. So that is our process that we will be going through. We hope to have that wrapped up by the end of the year. But you can anticipate that we'll be coming back with concepts around the November timeframe. That date has not been set yet, but keep your ears out for when that gets scheduled. Okay, the site itself. So here's the site that we are looking at. As Al said, it's 5¼ acres. It's currently primarily owned by the school district, with a portion that fronts Steuben being owned by the borough. It does back up to residential on the backside and has frontages on Steuben and Linden. Let's go to the next slide. This is a timeline that from the information we've looked at, we have put together that helps inform how we got to today and where we go. Again, we are not starting from scratch. Importantly, from the 1950s onward, and even prior to that, this is an important community space for that served as Crafton's high school football stadium. It still contains elements of public recreation. It contains the mini golf, contains public parking, and then it includes an enclosed ball diamond. In 2017 to 2018, the school district received interest from developers looking to develop that site. That essentially has established a baseline that we are conducting this planning study against. So we're going to talk more about that. In 2021, there was renewed interest in this site with a community citizen generated plan for an alternative use for this site. That was a park and commercial destination. 2023, the borough conducted a market study to understand the feasibility of what could happen on this site. that brings us to today, the Imagine Linden project here in 2026. Go to the next slide. So some of the things we pulled forward from past engagement efforts that the borough has conducted that we see is that the future development character in Crafton, there's been a lot of discussion about what that should look like. And the components of what we saw in that information is first that it fits Crafton's character, that it respects the scale and character of nearby homes and established neighborhoods. That it provides a mix of uses, including a mix of homes, shops, services, and gathering places that serve the community, strengthens connections to locations like the great transit amenity that runs through the community, improves sidewalks and walking connections, and to Crafton Park and surrounding neighborhoods, and include green and gathering space. So looking for opportunities to include usable green space and flexible places for people to gather. We go to the next slide. That was sort of the general character, but there was specific feedback on the types of uses. So neighborhood shopping was expressed. Places like a grocery store or an alternative to Giant Eagle, clothing and shoe stores, craft and specialty shops, places to eat and gather. So family-friendly restaurants, quality fast casual options, along with other food options, and flexible community space. So pop-up events, food trucks, farmers markets, and family activities and recreation. So this is where we start, right? Is from these past efforts that help us understand what's been discussed in the past. When we look at the site in context, I think importantly, we want to see not just this site as itself, but we have to consider the broader landscape of Crafton and the neighborhood that it sits within. And I will say that there's a lot of really great aspects to this site. It sits directly across the street from Crafton Park. It's within a 10-minute walk of Foster Park, if you dare wander into Ingram. It's across the street from Crafton Ingram Shopping Plaza. It is walking distance to St. Philip's, the busway, and only a 12-minute walk to downtown Crafton. So it's very amenity rich in its location. We go to the next slide. We also we also looked at the character and uses surrounding the site to understand what would be, from a development standpoint, what's compatible simply from a land use perspective. And what we see here in the bright colors is yellow is residential, red is commercial, green is park, blue is institutional. And if you look at the student corridor, so you know one of the main corners along the north side of Crafton, you can see there's a variety of different uses. It's not all residential, it's not all commercial. We have a bit of a mixed bag from different uses. And what that tells us about this site is there's multiple alternatives that simply from a land use perspective could be appropriate. So we could be looking at residential, park, commercial. Those are all uses that could be used on the site and potentially mixed on the site for mixing uses. We go to the next slide. We looked at the site itself. And one of the things I think is really important to highlight is that this does back up against residential properties. And so anything that happens here must sort of contend with the fact that it needs to mitigate any type of sound or light pollution that may cross the property line. That's an important consideration that needs to be baked in. There's also, you can see, currently it is fenced in, so the recreation field is limited access to those approved by the school district, and I believe it has been for at least 5 years. There's mini golf on the site. There's an access point off of off of Linden that accesses an existing parking lot that functions as overflow from Crafton Park. And I think importantly, it's a very visible site. So if you're entering from the highway and you're coming, or 79 and you're coming down Steuben, this is, alongside Crafton Park, this is going to be one of the first sites that you see entering the community. So it carries a pretty heavy load in terms of the visual identity of Crafton. We also see it from Crafton Ingram Plaza, so it's very visible. It has two pretty prominent frontages.
Chris, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at the map. Because I sat on council in the 90s, and our council actually was the one that had the agreement with the school district to share the property.
Yeah.
Can you tell me exactly? I know the school district owns the ball field, the borough owns the mini golf.
Yep.
Who owns according to my recollection, but I want to hear what yours is. Who owns the parking lot and who has control of the building that CIP uses?
So we can actually see right here. You see this line right here is the division between the two. So everything south of that is borough, everything north of that is school district.
Okay, that's what I recollect. The agreement we entered into with the district was we would gain the parking lot, the mini golf and the building for CIT use.
And
So that's the 1.4 acres.
yes, correct. And the conditions of that, and I will defer to borough representatives if I misspeak, but my understanding of that agreement is that is available to the borough to use as long as it's a public facing function. The second that it turns back to a non-public amenity, it reverts back to the school district.
But I believe there was a time stipulation when it reverts back to the school.
Yeah, 1 year. Yeah, you're right, it's 1 year.
And did that begin in phase one?
I'm sorry?
I think it's 1 year notice, you're saying.
It's a
right?
1 year notice, yeah.
1 year notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when does that, did that begin? Or is
No,
that
no.
when this is finished, it will begin?
Well, that's sort of yet to be determined, because the question is, what is the vision? It could be a joint effort between Grafton and the school board to move forward with a plan for the whole site with various pieces. So sort of like, that's to be determined, but there is a 1 year clause where the school board can say, I want to sell it. But they have to give the borough at least, up to a year. You're correct about that clause.
No, thank you.
If we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is, I think, an important distinction, and I want to make sure that we give this the time that it needs. When the school district received the purchase offer back in 2017, 2018, that was for a $3.6 million outright purchase for that property. And so what we've done is we use that as a benchmark, because that is a number we have to work within, because what we've been told is, if the school district were to investigate alternative options, they would need to prove to a magisterial judge that they are getting the same benefit as they would have from that other offer. They're not allowed by statute to accept lower offers for that property. And so that's why for our study, for our state, we've charted that line here, and you can see that increasing over time. What this charts is the purchase property along with taxes collected over time. So that is the benchmark we use for our study. You can see on the left is an image of what was proposed at that time. This is essentially hovering over Crafton Park and looking north towards the development. And so you can see there's a convenience store building with a gas station and 2 parking lots flanking that, a larger parking lot to the north, 2 inline commercial buildings, and a small community space that's tucked back in the corner behind the parking. So that was what the offer was in 2017. For our purposes and for our planning, what we've done is we've made assumptions of a reduced purchase price, then charted this over a 10, 15, and 20 year horizon, so that we can understand if we want to consider other options here, what does that have to look like, and what's the fiscal performance that essentially gives us the guardrails. And I'm not going to ask you guys to memorize numbers or do math, because that's not what tonight's session is about. We've done some of that for you. But what this slide is really here to tell us is that for something to rise to the threshold of what the school district would need to consider alternative options, we have some guardrails that we are planning within as a planning exercise this time. So those are some of the trade-offs we're going to talk about. Can we go to the next slide? So what we've done is we took a few examples of what we had heard from the previous engagement. These are not exhaustive. This is not the only thing that's being considered, but they were tested here simply for conversation and for the planning exercise conversation we're going to have this evening. We looked at a few different commercial alternatives that we have: a gas station, inline commercial or sort of strip commercial, a food and beverage anchor, and a medium scale marketplace. And you can see some of the names underneath these that those might be. So a gas station, maybe a Gecko or Sheetz. Inline commercial could be a Jersey Mike's or Chipotle. Food and beverage could be more of a destination brewery, First Watch. And then the medium scale marketplace could be maybe like an Aldi's. I think a Trader Joe's could be a little bit of stretch. But those are examples of some of the programs we were looking at.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
So if it's a food and beverage anchor, what else is in there?
So that would be a freestanding food and beverage anchor that would have outdoor patio space, and that would really be a freestanding structure, as opposed to something that might be in line with other So for example, a food and beverage might be a 6,500 square foot space, a larger restaurant, plenty of sit down dining. Versus something that might be at the inline might be something like 2,500 square feet. It's smaller, it's more grab and go. It's not necessarily a place to go to have a family dinner. As you would for a food and beverage anchor. So what we did though is we compared these against how much space they take up on the site and what the potential market value is in relation to that benchmark we talked about. And so what you can see is the third line down, the by acre benchmark. You can see how these perform over time against that benchmark. You can see that a gas station is well below that benchmark. Whereas the commercial is below, but not nearly as below as a gas station. And again, these are just simply planning level trade-off or planning level codification of some of this to help understand how they meet some of the background financial modeling. If we go to the next slide, we see residential uses. And so there's a couple we looked at here, the townhome pod of 8 units, a 24 unit condo building, a larger 60 unit condo building, and a mixed use building that would have commercial on the ground floor and residential up above. And you can see that these perform a lot better against that benchmark. And that's simply based off of the dynamics of how residential properties accrue market value versus commercial uses. So again, it's kind of a lot of market gibberish. But it is sort of the guardrails that we need to look at when we look at is this going to meet that fiscal benchmark. Go to the next slide.
So before you leave that, if I, because I want to try to understand, and I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's
So
what we're
when I
here
go
for.
back to the previous slide, that slide.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at when I'm looking at the, other than the 24 unit, which is included, since they're all 1 to 2 acres, then that would be a mixed use. They only need 2 of the 5 acres.
Right. So you could consider other uses outside of that.
So it was important to our council at the time that when we negotiated with the school district, that the property, that the parking lot and the miniature golf is the front door to Grafton.
Yes.
So I think it's important that as we discuss mixed use, it would be important for people to realize that as we go through this process, what they want as the front door on student versus not paying attention to it at all.
100%.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's astute and I think a great point for consideration this evening. So I want to talk about green space a little bit as part of this process. I think if you're watching this at this point, you say, okay, we're going to develop the whole thing. We're never allowed on that site again. Go ahead, sir. On it.
So you're talking this housing, but is this housing saying 8 units on 1 acre satisfies that totally? So are we saying that, or is it like, could it be 4 units plus a food and beverage? I mean, what could be a combination?
So actually, that's the next slide we're gonna show. So I'll show you that in a second. But before we get there, I want to talk about green space too, because I think this is an important aspect to this process, right? Is that the school district owns this property, and because they're disposing of it, they have certain levels of control over the disposition process and helping to inform what's considered. And so I think, green space is certainly on the table as something that could still be on this property if it fits within sort of the fiscal benchmarks that work for the site. And so if we look to the left, that could be considering walkable connections, simply a trail through the property or a nice frontage with, tree-lined sidewalk. It could scale up to, active business frontages. So sort of public-private spaces that if you did have the anchor food and beverage, that maybe includes an outdoor space that's kind of public, kind of private, but it includes that public use. Or you could scale it up to a community green space where you may have a dedicated green space that can be activated for the public. The trade-off here that we have to consider, though, further you get to the right, and the more space the green space takes up, the more you might need to consider additional development, right? That might be another floor of building, that might be a few more units. And so that's kind of the trade-off that we have to play with here is, if we want to see some of these community benefits to plan for that, we may need to plan for a little bit of additional density for developer to help make that. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Real fast, when you say 1 to 2 acres, is that just the building or is that building plus part of it?
That's building plus parking. So it's the full use. Yeah. So let's go one more slide, and then I think we're gonna transition into discussion. Yes, so this I think answers your question, Mr. Wozniak, about what does this look like? And so this is, again, these are just planning scenarios. None of these are things that are aimed in any form or fashion. They're provided here for reference. What we've done here is looked at what do different combinations of residential uses against commercial uses, how do they look when we sort of compare that against the benchmark, simply for planning trade-offs. And so what we can see here is if we, let's take the 24 unit condo building, right? If we would start at the top and we combine 2 condo buildings with 1 convenience gas station, right? That does not hit the benchmark. But if we do 3 condo buildings and 1 inline commercial, right? Now it's a trade-off where we start to see the residential is providing enough value that we can entertain that inline commercial, right? And so that's how the site can kind of get used, is can we reserve some of this for one use and some for another? And does it provide some of the uses that the community would like to see on this site? And the ones that do perform especially well here have stars on them because they have leftover space, and those are the ones that, because they perform so well, would be good candidates for a community green space or some type of community green use on that site. So it's a kind of a trade-off tool to look at how these different combinations work, and there's different numbers. So some of these are 5 townhome pods, some are 6, and they're all based on how much space on the site and what's the potential value that it creates compared against that benchmark. That's the background to the guardrails that I wanted to share with you guys this evening, so that when we do talk about uses, you know, that you understand what we're working with, which is the fact that there is a fiscal performance that will be required to be met for this to go into another direction. As far as what we can. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the fiscal performance. So the school board is looking for a one-time. The judge is saying you gotta give us a one-time. They got a one-time proposal.
Chris, could you pass the microphone?
Yes, yes.
So my question is that the school board needs a one-time set of money, like it was 3 million before. They weren't really looking at what the land was going to produce later on.
Right.
Is your benchmark looking at the one-time shot that the judge is going to be looking at, or is your benchmark also count of what future benefits?
Absolutely. It's a great question, and if we can flip back to that benchmark sheet, Mike. What this assumes is actually not that it's a one-time payment. So what this shows is that one-time payment, 3.6, that's what we're working to try to match, and it's projected over time for what that use would earn in taxes, right? So that's why this arc goes up, is because it's not just about the sale, it's how much taxes does that create over time. But for a gas station, that's relatively low. If you compare that against residential, the curve is much higher, right? And so that's where you can start to catch up with a lower initial purchase price, so that a developer could consider the types of uses that are not a gas station, right? And then over time, we have to, you know, the modeling we've done is to try to fit that within this funnel that tries to get to that point within 15 years, considering the taxes and original land sale. Does that answer your question?
In a way, to me, is that the judge is only worried about 3 million or whatever.
No, they combine both. The judge considers both when they consider the value of the property. They consider the long-term value and the instant sale, and they combine them just like being done right here. They don't look at just the value of the sale.
Yeah, I thought I heard it.
Did we explain that if there is a sale, you know, the school board proceeds with the sale? We've got a million hurdles to go through, but it has to be approved by a court.
Right.
Okay, I don't know.
That's my
Yeah, okay.
that's my only question was, what is the judge asking for? And if the judge is saying that the school board has to got a $3 million offer, then he will approve, he can't approve under a $3 million offer. And but my question was whether or not the judge is saying a $3 million offer is okay, do it for $3 million. And he doesn't really care what happens after that $3 million. The the $3 million. If he doesn't, the judge doesn't really care, right? If the borough buys it for $3 million, the school board says, okay, we got our $3 million, the borough bought it, the borough will do whatever what they want with it.
That's certainly an option that the, you know, that is a scenario.
Same with the developer, a developer could give them $3 million and say, okay, we're gonna give you $3 million, the judge says, okay, sell it to them for $3 million. The school board's free and clear, the developer, and I'm not saying this would happen, but a developer could sit on it and say, okay, I'm gonna speculate for 30 years on this thing and see what's gonna happen with it.
They absolutely good.
So.
Well, I don't
so
think
my-
that
my-
actually-
So my
Okay.
my comment is that the judge is not looking at future gains of this property by the use.
I don't know that that's accurate.
Yeah, they do actually look at both. I'm not an attorney, but Steve has told us that, and so has and so is the school's attorney. They don't look at just the value of sale. They look at the value that it provides the community over time. So that's why this whole thing is being discussed this way, because the long-term tax value does count in to what this, so if someone is offering 3.5 million and is gonna make tax revenue off of it, and somebody else is offering 3.5 million with no tax revenue, that does not meet the same criteria. And the school district would have to sell it to the person who's actually gonna produce tax revenue. Now, if you're gonna offer, I don't know what timeline they use, but they would probably have to offer 4 or 5 million to account for the fact that something is going to make tax money off of it.
Okay.
So they look at both values combined.
Years ago, that wasn't what the school board told us, told me personally.
Yeah.
Was that, hey, if you give us $3.5 million, you can have it, do what you want with it. Is what they said.
So, Mr. Price, we're using 3.6 million as a baseline, but a developer could come in and offer 6 million.
Sure.
But you had to have a baseline, so you're using 3.6.
The school district is, like, that's where they're drawing the line, because they have to be able to justify the sale.
Yeah, so there is that potential, but I think the exercise that's gonna help strengthen this, and I can say this because we've worked with a number of communities, we work with developers before. If a community has the table set and they're able to put forward something that says, this is what we really want, we want to work with you, but we have a vision what that needs to happen, and they know they can save 2 years of back and forth and approvals and other things, that's gonna go a long way. And so I think, while you're absolutely right, somebody could come in and offer more and it kind of throws it into whack. It's not a non-exercise.
Well, it just throws your table into whack.
It does.
It doesn't throw anything else into whack.
It's, yeah.
And Greg brings up a good point that I hadn't even thought of.
Yeah, and I don't wanna, I don't want you guys, leaving thinking that you get a chance to talk about, you know, what is the value of this? What do you wanna see here in a way that's tangible to community members? Cause if we get somebody who wants to move into Crafton, for example, they're not gonna look at that property and say, what's the market value performance of a gas station, right? They're gonna say, no, I didn't want I would rather that be a restaurant than a gas station, right? And that's kind of, this context is being provided simply so that you have it. I don't think it should exclude you from saying what you want to see here. It's simply just context so that you have the information. I saw a question for that.
Yes, one question. No, in terms of, it literally is across the street from the shopping center.
Yep.
Have you been talking to those businesses, some of the lack of businesses? What about the entire spot in the middle, which could easily, it's a parking lot? I feel like, what does Crafton do? You make a parking lot, we tear down things and make a parking lot.
Right.
Like, how can we develop what's already a marketable place? It's across the street. Like, why do you think all of a sudden people would start shopping on where the athletic field is and not have shop across the street? Where are we getting all these
Sure.
people?
Well, one thing I will say is that this property is owned by the school district, and that's the controls that they have here, right? They don't own the shopping plaza. And so while it may be a great space to develop, and I agree with you, infill development in the center, and we kind of break up that big parking island. It's a great idea, but there's no teeth to be able to make that happen, right? This is owned by the school district to be able to push that forward. And I will say that the quality of commercial too, you know, you don't see a food and beverage anchor, right? Because it's a different quality space. And so if you look over here and you look at a place that says, yeah, I want to go to a place that's green, it's got outdoor seating, it's, you know, a place I would be, that's not what is over in that shopping plaza right now, right? So it's a fundamentally different.
Do you think businesses are going, like I'm looking at Target, all these places would actually want to be there if it already, I just, how much research has really been done and who's gonna come shopping in all these areas? Like even in our upper Crafton, we have all these little, I mean, other than getting your hair done or getting your car fixed
Yeah,
or getting a tan, like what is there?
right.
Like, we have these whole little shops, and if you want that sort of thing, however, it's just not happening. And I just feel like we're gonna have an empty, we're gonna rip apart all that area, our green space. You know, other communities, they're developing that. People say, oh, wow, there could be, you know, the racket courts, there could be this, there could be the walking thing. They're not moving in because there's an Aldi's or, because there's one just over there, you know, I just, that's what's, to me, once you ruin that, it's gone. It's gone.
This thing.
Just, I think real quick to respond, I think one of the
Hold on one
options,
second, let me get the mic, because it makes it so you can hear people, that people online.
I think one of the options is we're moving forward, though, they said green space is on there, is on that, so I mean, one of the things I'm interested in is more rec space. Like having actual tennis courts or something in Crafton. I know the school has to use Roslyn Farms tennis courts. And they're not allowed to put up their senior banners because I think it's not technically owned by the school district or I think it might be the country club. I'm not 100% sure on that. But I had a question about the field usage. So like the baseball field, what is the school? I have not heard, what is the school district's plan? Where's the baseball team gonna go? Where's Little Cougars gonna go? They use that space pretty well. It is mostly used. I know girls soccer right now oftentimes has practice there in the evening. So I haven't heard any information from the school district where those groups are going to go. So I'd really like to hear that from the district, what the plans are to relocate those groups.
Yeah. You want to say it?
Well, I can take it lightly. I know they do have a detailed plan for how to do all that. And one of the options as well is whatever developer comes in, that they have to pay for an improvement somewhere else. We have two very underused fields and undertaken care of fields in the park now. They
You're talking
could-
out on the backside by
Right.
backbone?
Yeah, they
Okay.
could be redone. That's been talked about.
Flood-prone.
Yeah, but you can put it, but if you get money from a developer, you can use that money to create that. And they, and the school district's talked about it, we've talked about it, borough's talked about it. But there are other options, but you want to hear from you guys, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also add to that,
Yeah.
there, the borough,
Before you do that, I've neglected to introduce
Yeah.
a couple of folks. So let me introduce one other. Reese Smith is a member of the school board, so he's listening to the same conversation. John Oliveri, president of council, Emma Coleman, member of council, Lake Hope, member of council, and who am I leaving out? Oh, Greg is, and Greg's voting now. So just so you know,
in George Lonshark, all the school district, do that, there's.
oh, great, very good. Hi, Greg.
But when this was first being discussed, the school district did an extensive study, finding and identifying places for all sports teams to go. That's, was a while ago. I know they're in the process of redoing that entire, study again to basically reconfirm people can go here and there, here and there. I don't think they've finished that yet. At least I haven't heard them finished it, so that is in the works. It was all sorted one time before, and hopefully we should be able to sort that all out, again.
Would that be a simulation of the sale that, or is that just something the school has to figure out before, the property gets turned over to the new owners?
Well,
Just something to think about,
Well,
yeah.
figuring out it prior, because that has a big impact in the sort of trade-off of doing this. If it gets to the point where it's like, oh my god, selling it, we displace half our teams and have nowhere to do it, and we have to cut, athletic programs, well, now that's a lot worse than, oh, we have somewhere we are able to find for everyone to go, so it's being completed to understand the trade-offs of the entire thing. If that makes sense.
And I think you, of course.
How you doing? Just piggybacking off of what you said there, my name's Sean Clay, I'm the current president for the Arlington Little Cougars, the football cheerleading organization. And I know all this is being discussed. where would be a good point of contact for us to be part of those conversations about what the potential future are?
I think, yeah. One thing, when we have it in the site now, and I'll hand it to you next. We have a site now on the website that you can, go put in your name and address, and when we put out the survey, for one thing, that'll be good information. But you can also just email myself, email Mike, email the school district. We'll put the info, make sure the information gets into, the comments about this whole process.
Chris, one thing I don't think it was on the slide, but you didn't mention, was a portion of the property being in Ingram. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah.
to mention, because that also changes the taxes and everything else.
What was that again?
A portion of the property is in Ingram.
Yeah, I don't think it's on.
Sorry. Yeah. I'll turn it. Maybe for Chris to mention is some of the property is located in Ingram.
Some of this 5.5
Yeah,
acres.
and I didn't know about the purpose.
Needed on the side of the baseball.
It's the tiny track or the.
Good question, actually, I don't have her right in front of me.
They don't have to say, they just pick for themselves.
They have to say it was on in that portion. But that's it. And, sorry, ma'am, you wanna go ahead? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Comment back.
Hi, we live directly across the street from this property for the first house right next to the parking lot. And I was just wondering if you've done any research into the hit to property value that this will bring? Because as someone who is the age where I'm looking for a home and everyone I know is, nobody that I know in their 20s, 30s would ever buy a home across the street from a gas station. I would never buy a home across the street from an Aldi. There's gonna be massive shipping containers, trucks bringing things on Steuben Street. There's already an issue with traffic on that road. This is gonna really hurt property value. The lights from the gas station are gonna be shining directly into our windows while we're trying to sleep. The noise, I mean, we live right there and I would never buy a house across the street from any of those, maybe a brewery, maybe a public space. So I was wondering if you've done any research into how property values around this are gonna be hit.
Yeah, no, we have not done, research into the property values, but I think you raised a really good point. That is like. Still, like that.
John's got it. John.
You raise an excellent point, and I think that is, where, if you want to slide to the last slide here, I mean, that's the type of feedback I think we need tonight, right? Is what are the potential impacts, but also what is the potential opportunities, right? So what is the size of the open field, right? Anything's gonna be more impactful than an open stretch of grass, right? But what is something that would add value that you see would be a good use of that space? It's not a green space. And I think, to be clear, there's a huge sentiment here, and I agree with it, right? It would be great if it's a green space, but the process here is to consider potential alternatives if it's not a green space, right? And develop that vision. So do you have thoughts on, if not a green space, then what would be?
I mean, I think depending, for people my age, definitely something like it said, there'd be food trucks, pop-up events, maybe like live music during the day or something, but I would say also considering quiet hours, because I mean, if there's something that's open until 2 a.m., there's something like a gas station that's open 24/7,
Right.
we already hear all the noise of the Steuben Street traffic in our house. We both work from home.
Yeah.
We have important people on a meeting, she's calling patients. How is a gas station with people trying to get in? I mean, that small street, there's a lot of considerations into how long is, when are they gonna be open? How much noise are they gonna be creating? How much traffic are they gonna be creating? What are the people that are gonna be frequenting this place going to be doing around Crafton as well? And I kind of agree that there is so much space already in the Crafton Ingram Shopping Center that has just slowly, something opens up, and I've lived here my whole life and it dies. I'd say Giant Eagle's like the only thing that stayed. But I'd say green space would be amazing. That could be used as also like food trucks could come on weekends or for events, such as pop-ups, things like that. Breweries that aren't gonna be open super late, things like that are what people my age are looking for.
Yeah.
I definitely know that no one would wants to live across from the gas station.
And I'll say as somebody who moves here, I would love to live there. Ingram's actually a drive town, believe it or not. What are they doing about that? But I, that's the good kind of feedback that is gonna help us. Where I heard you say is really be cognizant of the hours of use of this piece of property so that the properties, can we flip back to the site map?
Yeah.
So that the areas that were in blue in that map aren't negatively impacted by the new uses, right? Let's go back. Right, so this whole, one more, yeah, this whole area, I mean, everything in blue here is residential, right? And so this is stuff that whatever happens here needs to be cognizant of. And so I'll say, what does this look like moving forward? That's the type of feedback we can take, look at the uses, look at potential site layouts, recommendation on spacing from the property line. Those are the types of things we can put into a vision that we can then hand to, have the borough can have, the school district can have in a discussion with a potential partner. And say, these are the priorities for what this is to do and create a positive outcome for us. It's not a burden that was gonna cause us all the way.
Could there be a walking trail or?
Hold on.
Wait, there's questions in the back.
We have someone waiting.
Hi, alright, I have a quick question, and it is also about like the walkable connections on the green space potential slide. And you kind of mentioned it earlier as that being something as minimal as a sidewalk with some trees next to it. And I just wanna know what like, if this is the minimum of what is like green space potential is like functionally a sidewalk through a commercial property. Like, is that being given the same weight as like these other options, community open space, active businesses, because they're all represented the same way on this sort of chart here as like a star.
Yeah, well, the answer is neither one have been considered with any weight yet, right?
Okay.
They've been put on sort of a slide for discussion here for this evening so that we can explore together and hear what opportunities are and what a potential positive outcome could look like, so.
Right.
That's about, the intention is really to sort of show that there is a trade-off that with potentially additional, there's a potential that maybe more green space could be had. Because you're starting to sort of concentrate some of that market value.
But the walkable connections, what does that mean specifically? Just a sidewalk or?
It could mean a lot. It could be a trail, it could be a sidewalk. With landscaping, with trees, I mean, there's not really an answer here because it could be a whole lot of things. Based on what folks want to see, so. Well, let me, before we take the mic away from you, I'm curious, what does a walkable connection look like? It could look like to you.
I've never heard of this, of what a walkable connection is, so I was sort of just trying to figure out what you meant by it, like. Or what if that's a term that's used in developing.
Sure.
Communal properties, like. Because and it just struck me like the markup of the gas station from years ago. It sort of shows like a sidewalk. I don't know, I can't find it, but like, it just shows like a sidewalk going along it, and it's like, I'm sure that's like a really lovely like. Thing to have, it just seems like it could be anything as like minimal as just like a sidewalk next to a commercial property.
Yeah.
And if that's what we're considering also to be a green space, like, I just don't think that's what people would consider adequate,
Amen, write that down, Sydney. And what I'll say is when we wrote that, I think the intention is not that there is a walkway through the middle of a parking lot, right? That's not something I would consider a positive asset that's adding value to the community. What I would think is this is something that, again, in our brains when we were coming up with this for discussion this evening, is something that has landscaping and green space around it. But if you're in the community, you're looking to take a walk, that this is a good alternative for you to go find sort of a green space that maybe is, a half acre green, but is a nice, a nice walk that you could take with your kids or your dog or something like that.
I think that's, before we go, AJ's gonna speak, then Linda, I got you, then Steve, I think raise your hand, and then Lisa over there.
I was gonna see my mic because you had your hand up earlier. I'll go real fast. I just wanted to say I appreciate all of this, and particularly you bring up what don't we want and what do people want, and not everybody's gonna want the same thing, but it's important to be talking about both. For anybody who was here in 2017 and 2018, it was pretty clear that we didn't want another gas station. So I think that, I think that's probably a theme. First of all, the gas stations and banks operate like essentials. There's something about them that they're sort of like essential to a community. So they don't do the tax stuff, but they don't get, we don't get the taxation from them. And so that's one financial reason to not want to. People's property values dropped on the nice houses across the street from Walgreens. Those were the things we talked about at that meeting. People lighting, and we've seen that. So just, I think it's really good to keep thinking about what we do want, let's clarify what green space is. I would also just say, and I'm gonna just speak because I have the mic. I don't know how many people know, but we're working on connecting 8 miles of trails in Crafton through the study. So maybe there'll be a way to connect some of this to the next trail. Who knows? So I just think those are things that we can add, consider into the mix.
Thank you.
Have they ever considered just single family homes? Because the more people you put in here, the more police, the more fire department, the more influence we're gonna need.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if single family has been considered, but I will say that from the work we've done here, if we can slide back one slide, look at one more. Just from a townhome standpoint, it's just right on the mark, right? So if you're gonna spread out a little bit to single family homes, you're gonna get, we've got 5.25 acres. And you can put maybe a 1/4 acre per unit. I mean, it's certainly something we can look at, if that's what you want to see there.
I'd rather see single family homes than townhomes.
Yeah, that's something we can take a look at and see how it work. Yeah. I will say it's probably lower given the density, right? And that's why you see some of these being higher is because you get more, more units on. Somebody who's got, yes, sir.
And to echo a couple of the concerns regarding property values, light pollution, traffic, or your slide showing the 2 potential access points for Duncan, which would be the alley, but there's also Glen. That's a one-way street, and we already have traffic problems on that street because of the commercial it's a neighborhood shopping center. Had there been any traffic studies done, and if so, what are you providing as far as protection for the current residents in that plan? Because, like I said, currently, we are inundated with people going wrong way, speed, low stop signs. I've requested from the borough to put up signs limiting traffic during the daytime, during peak times. There's been nothing done. We continue to have the problems.
Which you said that's the land, is that shown on?
Duncan Avenue.
Duncan Avenue.
Duncan Avenue, okay. Yeah.
One of your potential.
Yeah.
We called the police several times because of like traffic issues and speeding, and I've been told there's only 2 cars on, and obviously it's not an emergency, so this is now gonna get worse. And I'm gonna hear the same thing, someone is going to get hurt.
Yeah, so those 2 that are shown as potential connections, that was something we saw initially where right of way actually meets that back end of the property, right? But when we looked at that closer, it really is not suitable for any type of legal protection at all, right? I mean, it's just not, so that's not the intention, I would say, from what that markup is. One thing that was thought of though is like, could that be a sidewalk connection? As opposed to the vehicular connection where, neighborhood would want to, is that any better? Is that also a problem?
Walking is not a problem, I mean, it's not. Yeah, no, walking is still a problem. But I guess to echo her point. Nobody wants to move into Crafton, England and put stores, so why would they want to put stores? I just don't see anybody knocking on the door to develop a store.
Yeah, we did get that in the last office. We got a gas station, but there wasn't an issue with that as well, right? And I will say, I think one of the things that behind the scenes that maybe a lot of people aren't privy to is some of the deal structuring and how much ownership plays a role in occupancy and management plays in some of those businesses, right? So we may see businesses come together, there will be a whole series of financial deals behind the scenes with how they're setting rates and how that property manager is managing that property that we're not privy to. And we also haven't seen new like grade A commercial space that is like white box clean, something to move into. They give that plaza there, I'm not intimately familiar with them, but you go out there and no, they're not very new spaces, right? So that too plays a role. I'm not gonna say I'm a developer, right? I don't speak for the market. I'm a planner and I'm here to help sort of coax out what some of the community trade-offs are. So I don't necessarily have the great answer for that, but I will say this, the market's shown interest in the past. So What's up, you know,
Second question I had, sorry, this is guys, but with whatever it's selected for maybe, I know you have to ask right here, that parking, lighting, so also, stormwater.
Yep.
Glen Avenue, Maxwell Avenue, those folks have actually had stormwater problems previously from runoff coming from the, Ingram Shopping Center.
Yeah.
So how are you going to ensure that you retain enough acreage out of that parcel for SCMs to be installed that are gonna effectively manage any stormwater coming from the development that's proposed?
Well, first off, we're gonna put it in the vision, cities can write that down. But secondly, we did remove 10% of the site area for stormwater management. So in the calculations we've done, we've already removed 10%. For that, which is kind of the rule of thumb for stormwater. But I think, what are we gonna do? We're gonna put it in the vision and make sure that, you know, the development that comes out of this is something that manages its own stormwater on site and doesn't create issues for the system. That's something we can put right into the group.
And I get one note to that. One note on top of that is, we just redid that storm line, and there's way more capacity than there used to be for stormwater, because it's now a dedicated line. It used to be a combined line there. Now it's a completely dedicated line, so it should be better from that perspective, for that.
Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Sort of. What's the outstanding? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds good. And I will say this too, we haven't said this, but any of this is gonna have to go through a normal development approval. So it's gonna have to have a traffic impact study. It'll have to manage some stormwater, do a stormwater module. So it's not going any other route than what a typical developer might be developing, right?
So you're saying that those potential access points for driving are off,
Yes,
so
Yes, you
don't
said so.
not have
Yeah.
access, okay.
yeah. We heard from the authority. Who's up there? Who's up there?
Lisa.
Okay, I have a question. So I'm back on, right down here.
Yep.
Okay, and I keep hearing everybody about green space and pop-ups, and that's what people want, everything, and food trucks. Who would own that? Who would we have to go to get permission to do that? I mean, we can already do that right in the park. If you wanna rent the park to do that, but who's to say, even if we do that, we'll be given permission, how much will we have to pay? I don't understand how that's all gonna work.
That's a great point. The answer is there's no agreement on the table. I think you raised a great point, right? If there is a green space, there would have to be some consideration about what is the public access to that, right? What does the public expect from that? Is that a space that's managed by the developer and you simply have access to it, or is it truly a public asset
Just
that actually scheduled through the roads?
Up.
Likely,
up on the screen.
physical kind of stuff.
On the screen, so
So what-
this is vision.
what would be your-
What
What
would
that
be my-
vision is.
What would be my
I
preference?
don't have that.
Is either the townhome or the smaller
Talking about, yeah,
condo,
yeah.
and
It's
just
not
put,
accessible.
and just put a couple, I
Get-
really, I just like to
please,
single
yeah,
family homes
yeah,
put in there,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
get
when
that
I
that's
get on
not
my-
cost effective.
Look,
I know that's not gonna bring in the revenue we need, and I know that's not
I
gonna
would
be
not
out
have coffee.
for the school, they're gonna need more money than just 8 nice houses in there.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, I'd like townhomes and a condo, because like everyone else is saying, we have that shopping center right there, we can't keep people in there now.
Yeah.
And I understand what you say about, well, it would be brand new and clean, it doesn't matter, if you put all those homes in there and you need stuff, people will come to the shopping center. And they'll come into the empty spaces.
Well, one thing I have heard from the owner of that development is that new people, because of the situation that she has, they want all new build outs. So if a Starbucks, she's tried to attract Starbucks, she's tried to attract bigger places like that. And because of the condition it's in, they won't come unless she completely rebuilds the building. So, yeah.
So in this discussion, I'm hearing a lot of feedback from my community, which I very much appreciate. But a couple of the things that I've thought of as I'm listening is one big thing about the shopping center versus this property is the shopping center is already owned. It is entirely up to the business owner what business goes in there and what is developed. You know, so it's entirely up to them what they want. So while there is a huge parking lot that could be developed, that's not exactly what they want. And if I remember correctly, some of the businesses in that, shopping center have veto power over what goes in there. So Giant Eagle has stopped other stores, other grocery stores from coming in. This property would not have that as a factor. You couldn't have Giant Eagle basically keep a single grocery place. Second is while people aren't moving to Crafton for stores or whatever, there is a demand for places to move into. Like, we all complain about not having stuff to do after hours. We're not having many stores. And that's because if you look around, we don't have many storefronts that are accommodable for an Aldi, for a Starbucks, for anything that we want. And if we really want to build a town that we have this stuff, we need to have the property available. And this is one of those opportunities to do that. I also think that this, and recognizing where this property is, this sits along major bus lines. The one that goes through the Crafton Ingram Shopping Center is one of, and I saw this during the PRT bus redesign process. It is one of the highest used bus lines in the entire county. People from Sheridan, people from Elliott, people from even the West End come to Crafton to shop. And I feel like having more options would not only attract more of our residents, but it would attract other residents to come and give us their business. And one of the last things that I kind of want to point out is, the elephant in the room, which is our financial and community's future. Crafton's population since 2020 has been steadily declining. Our population has a much older contingent. As they pass on or move out, a lot of the houses aren't being cycled through, and so the population and the tax base is kind of stagnant. And as we look towards the long-term financial and population stability of this community, this property is key to that. If we want to have good services, we want to have good schools, but we have to pay for that in order to have those services. And if we want to avoid massive millage increases from whether it's the borough, the school district, the county, one of the key things of doing that is property development. And as I've heard for years since I've lived here, Crafton has been the same for decades. So if we want to avoid having our taxes increase year after year, we have to develop somewhere. And this is our best opportunity. There is not another property in the borough that has so much potential, whether it's on public transit lines, whether it's access to amenities, whether it's the equidistant distance from Robinson to Pittsburgh. This property is very valuable. And if we're going to use it for something, we have to get the best out of it and look for the long-term future of our community when thinking about it. So I just wanted to add some of those thoughts from my perspective as I'm listening to folks. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll back and Chris, put your after that.
Mike, I want to go back a little bit in the, just trying to understand the parcels and the ownership of it. Because in the developing Linden, materials, it had a statement that, sold to Crafton for $1, they use it for municipal purposes. And they can, it can revert back to the school district with a 1-year notice, which sounds to me like an unconditional termination of Crafton's ownership. But that's not what the solicitor said December 9th, 2019, in a meeting where the commissioners, council members shot it down. What he said was, Carlington could take it back if they prove they need it for school purposes. So that's a big difference from being able to just hand a notice, take it back and sell it on their own. So that's my whole thing. I don't know what we should do with it, but I just want to maximize Crafton's part of anything, and it shouldn't be going to the school district. My issue with the gas station was not the gas station. It was they were going to give Crafton 25% proceeds because we had 25% of the property. We had 90% of their front street value. So whatever you want to do with the property, do. However, Crafton not the school district, should benefit. Especially from that frontage property. So I go back to, I don't think if what the solicitor said was correct. I don't think Arlington has the ability just to give us notice and take the property.
They do.
I have a question.
And we'd have to check with the solicitor to clarify. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's in the minutes of the 2019.
Okay, okay. And yours, Scotty?
I do have a question though, which is. Take that. Another one, I'll give it back for you. This? Yeah, it was just for me. I appreciate that comment, and I think there's a lot of behind the scenes that makes this a kind of complex project, but I would be curious to say, you don't know what to do with it. But I am curious, what would you want to do with it? I mean, regardless of that split, does that lead you to want one thing or another, or not want one thing or another for the site? Because that's one thing I want to make sure we answer questions about the complexity of the project, right? And that everybody understands what they are. But I also want to make sure, if you go to the last slide, that we don't miss out on the opportunity to hear what people do or don't want to see for a potential vision, right? So some of these questions that we had come up with were, what are the top priorities guiding development? I think we're going through that right now. What are important considerations about the current site? We've talked about that. No drive access from the west. What are examples of places or developments in Pittsburgh that you think would be a good fit? Like if you were to think of, man, I really wish this was crafted. Is there a place, or how does development look and feel? Those last two questions are really going to help us guide the vision of what it could look like and what our ultimate charge is to develop. So
Chris goes next, and second, I got you, and then I'll come over to you.
Thank you. I have a lot of questions. Listening to all of you, I just keep thinking. Shopping centers typically have a lifespan, and we've got the Crafting Room Shopping Center that pretty much displays Station Street in the past. I know there's multiple owners and there's some non-competes down there. We look at the back of the stores with the loading areas along Walsh Road, and it's not a pretty sight. I've seen other communities in my travels where they're built more in a circular fashion, and there's maybe an ingress and a regress. And all the activity is inside, but the exterior is very pleasing to the eye. It makes you want to come. And when I think of that, this 5.25 acres is quite small, but as you said, valuable. Crafton's probably about 727 acres. So to put that in perspective, it's a very small piece. Has there been any consideration in talking with the long-term plans of the individual property owners in the Crafton Ingram Shopping Center, which there are 4 or 5? I know one recently passed. He owned a certain strip. You've got another family, the Caymans, that own another strip, and so there's multiple owners, but where are they in life? Are they looking to offload? What are their plans? Because I look at this tiny little piece and I look at this large commercial piece adjacent to this property, and obviously you need a developer that's willing and able to spend money. I know that a gentleman from Beaver is a developer. He's done some wonderful things in Beaver. He said that there's too much risk. He didn't see the opportunity in Crafton. I see a cultural district, a movie theater. I just think that this could maybe be bigger and look more uniform and be more pleasing, with safe inroads and exits. Maybe some consideration where if there's a developer that has more than $10 million, given your one scenario, that could come in here and look at a bigger picture and maybe talk to those owners and do some additional exploration. That would be my recommendation. I'd love to see some mixed use. I think a lot of our elderly in these high rises that are 8 stories high might be interested in something that's only 3 floors, where they could get out of the building quickly and safely in the case of an emergency. Again, these are just some of my ideas, but I'd love to see some reasons to bring our friends and our neighbors from Roslyn, Thornburg, Roslyn Farms, Carnegie. I mean, I think we could be a major attraction if we do more, but it's a big space, it's a valuable space, but I think we should look at the long-term big picture and what's going to happen to that Crafton Ingram Shopping Center should this succeed. what are they gonna look like? Are we gonna be tearing buildings down and, well, just maybe look 10, 15, 20 years out and think about how this is all going to fit together. That's just my opinion.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I can only speak briefly to the owners that are there. They're, I would say the largest owner doesn't really have a vision for what they want to do next. Their sons probably will be taking it over soon, and then it could change very drastically depending on what they want. But we've heard not much as far as the vision. Yeah, as far as the vision is concerned. And then with the other smaller owners, there's really just a variation, or a significant variation. I know one just sold a property. But there's also one thing that's unique with that, being that it's been there for 7 years, Crafton itself has not invested in that property very much. And when it was taken over, there are two private streets that Wall Street, for example, and Glen Street are private. In typical developments of that size, the borough should own that. And that way you can control a little bit more of how that looks. You can make it visually more appealing. You can make an investment in it. And I know there's been interest. We tried to apply for a multimodal grant a few years ago. Weren't able to get all the signatures we needed in time, so we applied for the downtown Crafton one and only got $300,000. But there's possibilities there, absolutely, for the water investment. And I know, Stephanie, you were next. Thank you.
I was just gonna share what I would like to see. So we've been here for about 11 years, and it's not often that, like, when I go out to hang with friends or family from, neighboring communities, we don't go to craft, like, hang out after something has happened. So I don't know how many of you have gone to Carnegie's Farmers Market. They have a nice main district that Crafton really is missing. And so I imagine after a Crafton Borough event, or maybe like our 5 kids, like, oh, let's go get brunch across the street. They've got a nice green space, we can hang out. So where is it where we are bringing in, and so comment I want to kind of go back to, he's kind of said it quietly, but like you said, Trader Joe's is a stretch. So if part of this is bringing in tax revenue, we want to aim for like Trader Joe's type revenue coming in rather than fill in the blank. I know that's very misconstrued, but I mean, that's what we want. We want to bring people in. We want to be higher quality. So what is it that's going to bring people to hang out? And I think the space is big enough that we can have a mix of that commercial side of things mixed with, green space closer to the residential areas. So they're not, so that's what I would like to see. A place to, maybe after we're at the pool at 4 o'clock, oh, let's go grab a sandwich. There's nowhere to do that in that area. And I think Corey had mentioned this is a really valuable piece of property. How are we getting people to come here to hang out and to really up the value so that we are bringing in people who have that kind of revenue to actually boost our overall quality?
We don't want to try products in that.
Hi. I was just gonna say something actually kind of similar, which is, I guess just thinking about like, just maybe to see if this is maybe the vision, or at least like something close to the vision of what, could be, is like thinking about areas that I really like going to. I really like Bellevue, the little downtown area in Bellevue, I think is really cute. There's a lot of really nice little restaurants, nice little stores. There's the yoga studio that I love. And with Dormont, there's the doorstop, there's the movie theater, there's a bunch of cute little stores everywhere. That's kind of like what personally I would like to see. I think that like we do have, I guess just to give a shout out to a store that I think does have success here in Crafton is Fig Tree. I love Fig Tree. I think they've been a great addition to the community. I'm also biased because I know the owners, but.
Are they in the house? Cause they get a shout out. Yeah.
No, but they're fantastic. They're really lovely people. But I think that's been a really positive part of the community. So when I'm thinking about, we want to add businesses, like, yes, like right now, like, not to like kind of insult the current space that we have, that, the giant area, it doesn't look visually appealing. It doesn't look like a place where you'd want people to like go hang out and eat brunch. But, it could if people invested money, and it also could if we did something to that space.
I don't think anybody else.
Just to piggyback, I really wanted to emphasize this. I think we've already discussed that this is obviously a really important piece of property. Another reason why it's really important is it could set a precedent for the developers of the major shopping center to follow suit. So if we set a really great precedent in terms of design and aesthetic and whatever community offerings it may have, that can and may impact the developers to want to follow suit. Because they may see the progress and success of the, tangential businesses.
Who gets rid of Mike, what else did was it, oh yeah, Claypool. That was somebody for you guys, huh?
I just want to reiterate the comment about the shopping center being private property. We, as a borough or community members, the school district absolutely has zero control over what they do and do not put in that shopping center. That said, I agree with the comment about if you make it nicer around, maybe they will want to come here and be nice in this, maybe develop this space, make it nice as well. My other thought was, I've heard a lot of different things, but what comes to mind for what I would like to see there is something that's not overdone, but not underdone, because we have a lot of issues with traffic and parking in general as it is. And if we throw a Starbucks on the corner or a Trader Joe's that we don't have around here, everybody's gonna be flocking to that spot. That's gonna clog up Steuben Street, that's gonna clog up Linden, it's gonna clog everything else up. Because they're not gonna widen any of these roads for something to go in there. So something to think about, maybe we don't want something too huge in there, but something that's big and just gonna bring people.
And I'll come back to you. Colton kind of hit on what I was about to say, but attractive businesses attract other nice businesses. When we talk about the Crafton Ingram Shopping Center, if there was some kind of commercial development that could occur in space, that could be the shot in the arm that turns a lot of nicer. I mean, the Crafton Ingram Shopping Center, maybe a lot of renovations occur. And on the financial projections that we're looking at, those financial projections from business only look at the Linden property. They do not look at the residual tax increases that will occur potentially in and around Crafton Ingram Shopping Center. So right now we're looking at just that property, but it doesn't operate in a problem. That the implications that will occur on the property will set forth outside of that, whether that's residential, whether that's Crafton Ingram Shopping Center and other things. So.
And we do have, I'll get back to you after you had waited a little bit longer. Thank you.
So there's been a lot of, I think, really great points that everyone has brought up. I do want to kind of go back and want to make sure when you guys are doing your study, that you're really, when you're looking at the green spaces, as I hear, the commercial and the residential, that as we look at the green, that's what butts up to the residential properties. So maybe it like goes around the edge, maybe looking at feasibilities that is kind of on the outskirts of it, whether that be the condos or whatever, so that residential backs up to the other residential to help buffer the noise and the light for the others, or a path of some kind that you can, if the commercials in the center and you can walk over and then sit at the table. It's just something to consider. When there's been really lots of fabulous ideas, commercial. I don't really have anything to add to that. I think there's been wonderful points about that.
Sounds like a great explanation of it.
I got one more person back here. I do know that there have been people online waiting as well, so. We'll open that. I don't know, maybe we need to do that, but maybe we know.
The only thing I wanted.
Their names are on the
to add
screen.
just for the list
Nicole
we're
Irvin
running
and
over
Stephen Short.
is the rodent population, based on, we have already in that area had a rodent population. And to bring in some sort of, that as a some sort of food establishment, just something to keep in mind that there, once that Family Dollar came, I have friends that live on that back street, they constantly have a rodent problem. So just wanted to throw that out there, something to think about.
And who else is waiting? Avery James and then Mary.
I believe my ideas are already on slide 5. If you go to like the site and community context, Greg and I years ago, probably in 2021, we kind of had an architect do a mock-up plan of what that space might look like. And I'm not sure if you can zoom in on that, but it has a nice kind of buffer around the, neighborhood there. That kind of like develops it, but also kind of protects those like property values. With like green space, trees, just like a natural buffer like that. But if you want my thought, that's the plan I would like is right there.
Which one? The one in the middle?
The middle one, yeah.
He was.
That middle one. Yes, yeah.
I would love that too, and actually, we looked at that, one thing I will say, just for the context of the conversation is, the amount of commercial that was represented in there did not get to the fiscal benchmark, right, which is kind of the context for planning, so I would wonder, and I think we can test, like, and that's kind of what we're doing here, right, is how much development can we see and still get good quality green space as part of the development? And I think that's kind of the trade-off that we're, what's that?
I have another rendering of that as well, like bird's eye view.
Yeah. It's beautiful, it's, and I guess the question would be is, does that still work if we put some residential in the back corner? Yeah. It's a question.
And, somebody else.
No, I just wanted to, you're talking how you like Dormont, you like Bellevue. That's all the old spots. We have those places. Why aren't we developing? We've got Blue Snell. That's one of the things, when you go into those communities, you love fig trees, so do I. So I want to, what do they call that, the coffee place you're talking about? We need to be developing up here also to make these communities like it's so walkable. Not everything has to be down at the shopping center area. And I think you love those, going to all those stores, and I go there to those too. But did you notice that none of them are name brand stores? That's the kind of stuff. Do I want stuff? We've got Dunkin' Donuts. You've got those things, and that's what I'm worried. You introduce those kind of places, you're just kind of, again, they're just those big box stores, what they all become. I just would love to see these areas developed and really utilize these spaces that we have. The other thing, I still, talking to I missed his name, who's with the little cougars and that. You take all that property away. The kids can walk there. That's what I love about that area. Well, you all know I run the mini golf, so I'm down there, I'm watching everybody. They like partying me too, from all those years of gardening. There's people who are walking. That's what's so great about that area. And I'm just worried, once you take all that green space, I do like that spot, but do I want these big box stores? No, go in the shops. For real, that's what that was created in the 50s for. But I don't know. I just hate to lose that area where the kids, they don't walk. If you look at those fields down the CIT fields, you see adults walking, but you never see the kids walking to a game 2 miles down a hill, 2 miles back up. This is where they can walk. This is where they can go. What can, I don't know. It's just very disappointing to think that we're gonna just make a bunch of storage down there. Sorry.
Hey, will you next?
I was gonna draw attention again to what James had mentioned about the plan that you actually like with how we're gonna get there. And I think we're missing the boat. I think we're missing the boat on how we're gonna get there. Now, what is this? How do we get to this plan? It says like you have 10 years to make $4 million. Okay, how do we make this happen? How do we look at how much this business is gonna offset what the cost is? What is the soft money that's gonna be bringing to Crafton, what property values because of a community that has a great community space.
Hey, Jim,
which
we
brings
have
more
3
people
people
in
online.
and raise the property value through
Yeah.
all of
I'm not sure if it's
Crafton,
gonna
not
work.
just that area. The other thing is that there is, how do we get there? Do we get there? Look at Pittsburgh Parks and Rec, Pittsburgh Parks and Services. They put together a group that started to raise tons of money, and that money then was used to help the parks in Pittsburgh. So
why aren't we thinking about, okay, this is the great alternative that could be really help the community and people really like it. This is the best alternative. So let's just quit talking about, not quit talking, but let's start talking about how do we get there? How do we get there? How do we raise money to get there? We have, right now, you're saying we need 4 million over 10 years. How do we swing that? How do we make that happen? Instead of just taking what these guardrails are that we're talking about and squishing ourselves into them. So I think we need to look at this from a different perspective. I think we need to take the best plan for what the people want and what's best for Crafton, and then we figure out how to get there.
Thanks.
So I have a question, since it's controlled by both the school district and the borough. If let's just hypothetically say we can't come to any agreement, can the school district take their property and do whatever they want with it? Or do they need this jointership?
We need to confirm that with the solicitor. Based on what the gentleman back there said, we have to confirm that. I'm not sure. And we have one more here, and then we're gonna try to let the 3 people that are online speak.
I just want to reiterate what you were talking about, that using the public green space. I know that's not what you want, but such things like, flag football, those leagues that generate money. They use the space that we have here. They also generate money for you as well. There's potential for $5.4 million. If you get like 18,000 people, do we have the capacity to support larger sports like the flag football? I know you're not here for that, but as Carlington School District, using this space for our families, keeping them in the neighborhoods, generating the money for these. And you get money from the tournaments and it strengthens the community. And you were quite right, there is no one walking to that field. But there's some very large cars. And that is money. That is money coming and going from that field.
Those big cars.
And there's nothing down there for them to do. So is Carlington possibly able to continue to support a public space?
That sounds like a question for someone from Carlington. Reese, you wanna, George left, so it's just you, Reese.
I have absolutely no clue, to be quite frank with you. That's not, an idea I've heard. We can maybe try to run the calculations, but I don't know much about recreation sports leagues and what the, exactly how they make their money or what the, market, interest is in that right now. But that's a good idea, and hopefully that's something we can look at in this process, but I have really no clue right now.
Thank you.
I'll just say from the person who has to pay for the pool every year, who has to manage paying for the pool every year, it costs about $320,000 every year, and we make about $160,000. So uses like that, recreational uses, are not typically profitable. There might be niche things that are, but typically they're not.
But that's local.
That's local, correct.
That's just
And even CIT though, you could talk to CIT about it as well as a nonprofit. I wouldn't say that they're incredibly profitable, but you'd have to ask them. But we're gonna try to go and let you folks that are online, and then we'll get back to the room.
Tell Nicole we're unmuting her.
Okay, Nicole, we're gonna be unmuting you.
Hi there. Can you hear me
Yeah,
all right?
Perfect, yep.
Awesome. So hi, I'm Nicole Criven, 184 South Grandview. I just wrote a little statement so I don't forget anything. Seems to me we're trying to put out a fire with short-term solution that doesn't measure long-term risks and benefits. I know so many people who have
Nicole, you're
concerns
getting hard to
about.
hear. You were very clear at the beginning, but now you're kind of fading out.
Okay. I know so many people who have concerns about development impact, sewage, stormwater runoff, parking. No one wants to live in a place where they can't park. Nobody likes going to the asphalt desert down by Giant Eagle, which is in serious need of rehab. No one will want to live there. I think we need to think about the 100-year plan. The people this will affect are not in this room. They're not alive yet. And people get key performance indicators all wrong. Money is not a reasonable indicator of performance to build a judgment on when you want to understand the value to people. First off, if you want to use money alone, evaluate the infrastructure costs and the financial burden of new students. A baseball field serves a third place function. It's a place for gathering, intergenerational contact, and community interaction that creates a sense of belonging and local identity, which Crafton has. People like to live here because of that identity. Physical activity, air quality, surface runoff, free public access. These are things we need to evaluate. If you want to know how a space should look and feel, it should feel like it was made to serve the needs of the people and not for financial incentives. Have you ever enjoyed being in a space that was initiated by a developer with a short-term plan? No. I want our community to look like we excel at long-term planning rather than robbing Peter to pay Paul. We don't want to remove a free public resource from the bus line without replacing its value. We don't want to make it private and inaccessible. True sustainable economic development is getting lost in this picture because a single person doesn't want to renovate a concrete jungle. Commercially, we have traffic jams, we have no real Main Street. That's the problem, not whether we should develop the adjacent area. We don't have a large covered pavilion for events, an outdoor classroom, tournament grade sports facilities, concessions, a destination place that brings in foot traffic and spending, a place that connects people who would otherwise not meet. So I think there's a better way than guessing and saying if we make one part nicer, people might show up. We need to be sure that it will work and sure who it will serve.
Thank you. We're gonna be who?
Hang on one sec. Stephen Shorthouse.
We're gonna be unmuting you, Stephen, if you want to ask your question.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sorry, I can't be there. I'm out of town, but I'm glad to see everybody who is there. My main comment is that I want to make sure that it is mostly used for an upgraded community space for residents of Crafton and surrounding areas to come as a destination to Crafton for recreation, sports, community events, those kind of things that benefit the people of Crafton and those around. And it looks like an attraction, not just, another gas station or a small amount of housing or whatever that is. The one thing nobody ever says is, oh, it's too bad they have community space. What you might hear someone say is, oh, they put in a gas station or they put in some place to eat, and then 2 years later it closed, and now it's an empty Eaton Park or whatever it is. You never close a community space. They never board up a green space. It's always a good thing. So that's my main comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And now we're going to be unmuting Julie.
There we go.
Okay, hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I live on Bradford Avenue and I've been here about 15 years. I would like to see a combination of housing and retail. I not too long ago visited a friend of mine who lived in a community that had been zoned where on the ground floor there was storefronts and like little stores and like a post office, a nail salon, a grocery store. And then up above was 3 stories of condominiums. And so he's retired and he never uses his car. He can walk everywhere he needs to go. And I would like to see something like that. And I mean, I agree, ideally, if that shopping center could be revamped where it could be the place that had all that, but obviously there's that the borough doesn't own that space. So I would like to see a nice thoughtful development that has retail on the bottom and condos above. And I think the property tax revenue would be very helpful to the borough if we had that. But again, a thoughtful, well-designed, you know, kind of a space.
Thank you. I think that's everybody online. Who else has a question? Oh, thank you.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to say that thinking ahead to potentially improving the traffic flow along Steuben and walkability in general, we might need to look at widening that space. And one business that pops into my head as needing to move with the craft and ice cream delight. So I would love to see a space for them. I know it's not the same because right now they have Steuben front property. But if we could find something similar for them in that area. And also to reiterate, I'd love to see as much green space as possible.
Okay. Thank you. Who else? Eric? We tried to get the last words that we should. No, we'll try.
Thank you. I just want to bring up one thing that hasn't been added to the notes, and I want to get it. I'd like for us to challenge ourselves to pay for it. For real, push council, push the school board, to consider going to the judge with us paying the bill. It's $4 million over 10 years. I think we can swing it, right? So why not put our money where the mouth is and put the community center on it, do the things that we want, keep Carlington athletics there, keep Little Cougars there, do all that. But we gotta make whole, right? Somebody has to pay somebody. So just make sure that it's in there so that it gets flushed out. Nobody might support it. I'm happy to pay more taxes for it if anybody wants to get on board with it, but I just would like to make sure it's added to the list of things that get made.
Okay, just anybody else? I'll start here since you're over here.
So, I mean, obviously, all of you said many things that we would all like to see, we like restaurants other than Serafino's with a certain down at the shopping center, we'd like to see other type developments. We have commercial districts already that aren't utilized. And essentially, we have 5.2 acres of park that we're all talking about paving. Okay, you can't get that back. It's gone forever. Once this property is sold to the developer, they have the same control that the shopping center represents. So what if you're in the shopping center situation in a few years? Green space isn't really green space. Green space is the water retention pond in the back of this property, where it's a few trees. Go downtown, if you walk through, there's technically a little park on Grant Street that winds through in front of the PNC building. It's about half a block long. That's green space. That's not green space like we think of it as park space. So essentially, the first step here is, are you willing to give up 5.2 acres of park? And if you were in one of the park in front of a group of people from one of maybe the more affluent communities around here, you think you'd be able to sell, hey, we're gonna take 5.2 acres of your park and we're gonna put some townhomes. Never. Okay? Go to these facilities like St. Clair's Community Center. Think, is it Scott or Collier? One of them has a big new facility. Scott put $2.1 million into that pool. You know, these are the things that really attract people, and the people are the tax base. I mean, the Crafton historical heritage, Crafton heritage. Crafton is a community of comforts. Okay, that's what it historically is. It's not the business district. It's not a lot of restaurants. It's not Bellevue. Bellevue is very nice. Like, and beers at the pub there. But what we really need to do is utilize the community space, that park space, and grow. I've played Turkey Day football games on that field. I've coached youth soccer on that field. You know, so it's a part of the community. It became part of Carlington when we were merged. And there's still, I think, an outstanding issue with one of the early deeds that there may be some other owner part of the property. But either way, the first step
where you talk about, I like single family homes, or I like townhomes, or I want a business district. Be willing to pay a little more. See.
Okay, so I definitely hear the argument about keeping it a green space, but like, and this is where I really want to ask the community. The space needs investment. That investment has to come from somewhere. Grants can get us so far, but it would have to, if we wanted to build a rec center, a community center, we would have to do a village increase, and not a small one, a big one. So if we are really like, is everybody in this room, and everybody can clap or whatever, are you willing to pay extra taxes to upgrade this? Like, then okay, and that's great. So, okay, that's all I really needed to know. Thank you.
I don't work with that. Yep.
I'm just wondering, has any thought been given to reach out to corporations to be able to sponsor and to be able to feed into what we would be paying in taxes and what they would be willing to match for? I know that it would be way off balance, but AHN, how they sponsor and what they all developed down there in Coriopolis. But there are other places in other parts of country that I have been into that they have gotten corporations to be able to come in and do something like this, to keep it a space that we can use for our families and to be able to even increase what we would have as far as a tennis court, something like pickleball.
Great. And you know, that does, the ownership then of the property would have to be decided, but, when I look at this color-coded map, you know, the heart of it is green. And I just think that's the way it should remain. I see this as an opportunity to expand the green space. People need green space, they want it and they use it. And I think, you know, this is a visioning session, and it seems to me like overwhelmingly people have spoken in favor of retaining the space for public use, like it's been used historically, for community activities. And maybe the visioning should be, then if we were to retain that usage, what would we like to see there? And if, you know, then okay, so who owns the property? I'm assuming, you know, it becomes, you know, Crafton, I don't know, but then there's grant funding, like we're saying, corporate sponsorships. So, I mean, I think there's probably a way, and I just cannot believe that, you know, we know we need to generate revenue for this community, but I don't think it depends on 5.5 acres. I just think there are other ways that we can do it, looking smartly at some of these, like Mary was saying, the existing properties that can be possibly redeveloped over a long time, working with the owners strategically.
Just one comment. One of the gentlemen over here suggested that Crafton purchase it back from Carlington School District. But that was part of Crafton High School, which was our tax dollars that bought it originally. So we should not have to buy it back from the school district if we want to keep it as a green space for Crafton. It should just remain a green space here in Crafton. The school district is part of our community. And for them to just make that decision without Crafton as a primary investment owner of that property is just, you know, doesn't make sense that you would have to buy it back a second time.
I
also think there might be an opportunity for us if we're looking at green space, to look at the green space combined. And how do we use the park and the 5 acres, and what can we do with that to make it not just an isolated thing, but an integrated thing? And then maybe there are other opportunities along the backside of Afton, for instance, which is residential and so forth. Who knows? I have no idea about that, but I'm just saying, let's look holistically at green and do it. So that would be my one thing. The other thing is that, these ideas are really what we're here for tonight. The next step would be really to see what is potential impact on townhouses over time. If you have the right level or quality level of townhomes and the tax revenue that generates, we really don't know. So let's just put some numbers to what we're talking about, and that will help us, I think, make some clearer decisions. But I'm all for looking at green space big. So that would be my other thought.
I was sitting here and I was becoming somewhat disappointed because it sounded to me like we had all but given up the ship, that this was gonna be some kind of a development with stores. And like several people have said, I don't know that anybody's gonna move into Crafton because there's a new yoga store down at the 5.25 acres. When we moved here for the community. And that's what I have found to love about Crafton over 50 years, is the community of it. And I have 2 cons, but this is the first one. So, that's what I would like to see to continue. And I was very encouraged by Eric saying, let's buy it back. Dan saying we should have to buy it back because it was ours to start with. And Rich saying that also. And the idea of combining that green space with the park, with the property on the other side of Afton. My daughter goes to all kinds of places because of their public spaces. She was just up at Upper St. Clair for the wonderful splash pad that they have. She goes to Cranberry for whatever they have. Why don't we have what they have? And she goes there and she spends money. When people would spend money here too, if we had something to draw them in. Townhouses, sure, people will buy them. There's townhouses up on Grandview too, but they're just houses. That doesn't really build on the community of Crafton. And that I think is so important. And when you were saying about value, I don't think money is always the symbol of value or the true measure of value. So I think there's a lot to consider, and I think we really do need to consider the green space in keeping that as it is, or developed in some way to make it bigger in Crafton. And my second question was, when I saw the OHM, I was looking that up. And can you explain the relationship between OHM and Allegheny County and the Allegheny County Comprehensive Plan with 31 boroughs? What is that relationship? And does it have anything to do with why we're sitting here tonight?
I'm not sure the 31 boroughs plan, but our team is working on the countywide comprehensive plan with Allegheny County. That is no relation to this study whatsoever, but it is another contract that we have, is to help the county develop their 25-year vision of the county.
So is this a part of that Allegheny County plan in any way?
In no way, shape, or form.
Thank you.
I just want to make a few comments. I agree with what Eric had said about trying to purchase it back, but that's what we need to do. We could, get a committee together and, start to do fundraisers and things like that. I think the first thing we need to do is contact our most famous resident from Crafton. He might be willing to help out if we put his name on the field. Everybody knows what I'm talking
Again, I think this will be a question. This will be a question for your solicitor, Mr. Price. that since Carlington is 3 communities,
I missed what you guys started.
what I said is this is probably a question for your solicitor.
Okay.
That since Carlington is 3 communities, when we talk about, and I'm not suggesting for or against, but since we're 3 communities to make up a Carlington school district, does Crafton have the ability to override what Carnegie and Roswell Farms want if they want to develop it and we want to buy it back?
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I wrote some notes. I'm gonna read from these as well. I have spent my life serving this Crafton community and just have served on several committees and communities through the school and the Crafton community. I've been a 35-year employee over the last 45 years of Crafton Borough, hence the wet hair. I was teaching on aerobics tonight. And it's a great example of how people come to our community. We have outside a 20-mile radius coming. And tonight, people were heading to Giant Eagle after class. They do their grocery shopping after class. They take advantage of our other storefronts and our restaurants they've heard of because of it. So this economic development is important through recreational opportunities. And that's why I'm asking you tonight to look at the athletic field and the miniature golf course green space, not as a property that can simply be sold, but as an investment in Crafton's future. Think about what people love about Crafton and what makes people love Crafton. We have our library, our local businesses, our park, our pool, our miniature golf course, our summer concerts, the performing arts, movies in the park, beautiful homes, safe neighborhoods, a sled riding hill, but most importantly, we have community. We are a place where children can safely ride their bikes to the pool or other locations. We are a place where generations know one another. I've been here 59 years, almost 59. We're about a month away. We are where neighbors show up when someone needs help, where friendships cross generations, where people still proudly say, Crafton is home, no matter where they are. This doesn't happen by accident. It is built through places and experiences that bring people together. And the athletic field green space is one of those places. So tonight, I am respectfully asking you to retain this property and develop a long-term vision for it. Imagine exponentially increasing the use of the athletic field as a beautiful and active recreational space with a walking and fitness track, native and pollinator gardens, a children's nature play area, outdoor fitness equipment, outdoor volleyball, tennis, soccer, basketball, or lacrosse fields, district and Crafton community-sponsored tournaments and events, a pavilion and a gazebo, space for seasonal farm markets, outdoor concerts, expanded seasonal activities, a developed miniature golf course which incorporates surrounding nature, and improved connections between the athletic field, miniature golf course, pool, and Crafton Park. I would like for us to think even bigger. Let's transform the field house into a stream and nature education center. And as an educator, I intentionally use the word stream, not just STEM. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. As a teacher for 36 years, stream is using science, technology, reading, engineering, arts, and math. Imagine Carleton students and outside school districts using the area as a field trip destination for outdoor classrooms. Imagine nature programs, camps, workshops, and educational events. Imagine the building being available for community organizations, fundraisers, church retreats, graduation parties, with options for recreation activities outside of the windows, and other rentals, education, recreation, community, revenue, all in one location. And I understand that both the borough and the school district have financial responsibilities. That is exactly why I believe we need to think beyond simply selling an asset to solve an immediate financial challenge. Let's make this asset work for us and for in the long term. Let's investigate revenue through facility rentals, camps, tournaments, events, miniature golf, concessions, educational programming, and corporate sponsorships. Let's aggressively pursue state and federal grants, foundations, corporate partnerships, and recreation funding. I actually can supply a list of grant opportunities even to the district. If you would be interested, I can send those to you as options that I've looked up. Let's develop a master plan and then find funding to make it happen. We don't have to do everything at once, but we do need to protect this opportunity. Because once this green space is gone, just like so many have said since I've come in, is we do not get it back. I want to leave you with this thought.
People aren't going to move to Crafton simply because of a development plan. They are going to move here, this is important, because of the idea of Crafton. They're going to move here because their children can walk to the pool. They're going to move here because there are parks and recreation, because they can attend a summer concert, because the neighbors want to know one another, because they feel safe, because they feel welcome, because they can imagine raising their own children here. This is exactly what makes Crafton valuable. For almost 59 years, I've watched this community create friendships, families, and memories. My 4 children have grown up here. They too have worked at Crafton Pool, as with many of you and your families in attendance tonight. And now I have the privilege of watching another generation experience the same community that has meant so much to our family. I don't want to be a generation that looks back and says, I wish we had saved that. I want us to be the generation that says, we saw the opportunity and we made it better. So I respectfully ask council and the Carlton School Board, please don't sell this green space simply to address the short-term need. Protect it, plan for it, invest in it, partner around it. Let's make it a place that produces recreation, education, community pride, and yes, revenue for decades to come. Because we are not just deciding what happens to this piece of property. We are deciding what kind of Crafton we want our children and grandchildren to inherit. I believe in Crafton. I believe in our schools. I believe in our residents. And I believe together that we can find a better solution. Let's save this green space. Let's make it better. And let's make sure that 50 years from now, another Craftonian can stand here and say, this is why I'm proud to call Crafton home.
Sharon said a word that really stood out with me, and that was unique. We don't want to be like everyone else. We don't want to be overbuilt. Nowhere for anyone to go. I came here not really knowing exactly what I wanted to say or how I felt about things, but I love Crafton. I think we need to explore beyond the 5¼ acres that we're discussing here tonight. I want to use the word economic development, right? We need to get creative. We need to look at the glue in the in our fabric and the threads. And we need to look beyond the 5¼ square miles. We look at how we can improve what's currently here. We have a lot of things that I would say could be better. We have things that are broken. We have things that have needed attention for a very long time. I would like to suggest that we explore other opportunities in our 1.14 square mile and look for additional tax revenues that we can gain elsewhere while doing all of these wonderful things that Sharon and many of you have talked about tonight. I love Crafton. I'm not going anywhere. Crafton is a place of homes for home-loving people. We want to keep those home lovers here. We want to have a place for future generations to call home. I don't want to see prefab homes or, affordable housing is slapping something up very quickly. I have a house that is falling down. It was slapped up. It's not here in Crafton. It's 25 years old. It's falling down. I had to jack it up. I had to put in trusses. I had to put new beams. Those homes that they're building today, unless they're multi-million or $500,000 and up, they're not going to stand. I just like to say that we need to look at places like Second Ward School, places maybe along the rails where you've got a narrow area going into a wider area. Maybe there's other areas that we can develop that we haven't discovered yet, or maybe we just haven't done our homework. So Sharon, I love everything that you had to say because I love Crafton and I admire everyone being here. Let's just look at where we can realize more revenue. What is going to keep the erosion that's been happening in Crafton from continuing? Fill up the stores, bring good businesses in that attract the people. Again, I would go to all 4 owners down at the shopping center and say, look, what can we do together to be better? How can we grow the shopping center to make it more desirable to attract the people in the surrounding 20-mile radius that Sharon mentioned? I just think that we can do more and we can preserve that and make it better, as in Greg's example. let's have some green space. Let's have a sunflower garden. Let's have a rose garden. Take a look at West Virginia Botanical Gardens and, you know, maybe look at some of their ideas. Give people a reason to come here. So, and look at the other opportunities that we can make money on.
Thank you. And I think we've had Nicole waiting on.
Yeah.
Nicole, we're gonna unmute you.
Hi there. Yeah, I really appreciate what everybody's been saying, and I think it's been making me think about power. We're living in a time when corporations are buying up everything, and selling the field is part of that trend. It takes away our power. Ownership of land is power. Right now, we are in this room and we're having this conversation. Our right to have this conversation goes away when we sell the land. If we think the space is under leveraged, there are ways to make it more profitable to the borough and to people without selling it to private interests. Tournament grade sports facilities can yield 10 to 20% profit margins. Community meeting spaces reduce tenant turnover. They differentiate us. Areas that support local culture attract people who share our values. So we have situations where our community has to sell poorly managed properties and retrofit or find solutions for them. We can avoid that by ensuring that we retain ownership in the first place, and we can be proactive about supporting the cohesion of our community.
Thank you, Nicole. Anybody else? Right?
Yeah, pretty much what everyone is saying is that they would like to see it stay a green space and for community use in that way. And I'm gonna ask this task force to change direction. Instead of what our presentation was tonight, which was how many houses and how many buildings and how much green space, what's that combination do we need to make this hit this benchmark? Why don't we do what the community wants, which is tonight is being voiced as green space? Why aren't we looking at saying, okay, that's what the community wants. Let's spend your consulting money to figure out how to get to that. Instead of spending our consulting money to put together how many different buildings that we can fit on here to hit a dollar value. I think that the planning commission ought to think more about tonight. It is very, very evident that the people right now in this room and probably representative of Crafton want to see a green space and a community space and a recreational space. Why don't we use you and use the money we're spending for you to try to get to that goal versus coming up with how many different types of buildings we need to get something that the community doesn't necessarily want.
Very corner.
I'd just like to say I'm definitely on team green space, but I'd like to get it on record, like I wore my kids' hockey jersey, so the hockey deck would be good. And I'm the father of a 12-year-old boy, and I know him and his buddies roaming around town, kind of looking for things to do, and I would add skate park and maybe a small BMX track to that. And I'd like to echo what somebody just said is, it just seems like honestly, from my point of view, the beginning of this meeting was depressing because it was all about dollar signs, but the second half of the meeting was very encouraging because you kind of heard what Crafton wants. And I think we should, that should be the focus, is how can we make the green space happen? And there is a financial reality in the world. So yeah, we need to see if we can make it happen.
And just listening to everyone's recent comments, and you just mentioned about changing the direction of this, think of the positive support. They could launch this, and isn't it great to have positive support? for everyone who's worked hard on the borough, for people who were, you know, whether they've been planning, like, why you have all this energy, why use it for negative and fighting it or being disappointed with what happens and having the next several decades be like, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that. Run with this, you know, when you get so many people, and I know Grafton people, they will roll up their sleeves, just like they did for building the park at the time, whatever you need, they will roll up the sleeves and help you with this grassroots effort. So take advantage of this momentum and the positive momentum that you have and help launch this community forward.
Thank you. Alan.
What I said from, I don't know, 2 hours ago, whatever it was, but a while ago, that the planning commission wanted to be the host for a listening session. Well, we just had that. In my opinion, the consultant was hired to help us through this process. I didn't see anything different than what was asked for, namely, what would people think about it? We heard a lot of ideas, including a lot of discussion about community and green space and so forth. I think that's one of the things that's fair game. So I don't, folks, it feels like you're trying to create it like a barrier or an enemy to this thing. That's not what it was about. It was about trying to hear what people had to say. If I recall right, and Chris, you can probably identify this much more accurately, but there was a series of items that you had talked about for public input. This was one section. There's supposed to be some additional ones, and there's also, I believe, you talked about some different types of public input. So I think we ought to do that. And if you know what we've heard tonight, we've heard some variety of ideas, but I would say, you know, congratulations for offering your ideas before my reaction to all this. But let's go have whatever those additional items are, and if it sends us a certain direction, then let's try to work hard on that direction.
Yes. I appreciate it, Alan. I would echo that. I think there's a lot of good discussion, but none of it I would say is off the agenda, right? This is what we're here tonight to do, is to cover this tough topic. I mean, it's not an easy conversation. I think we heard a lot of good representation of those ideas. I think we can run with those, and the concepts of what green space looks like, we can run with those concepts. We can look at what those look like and how they stack up against the guardrails that we sort of inherited. So I think we already do another listening session in 2 weeks. So if there's anybody that didn't attend, I think we're gonna do it maybe in the same space. I don't know if we said it. Yeah, we'll be here again to do this again. We're gonna come back for a second. But I'd say send some folks who maybe weren't, want to get their voice out. We're gonna do this a survey, so that's gonna go out as well. Hopefully get even more voices. And then we'll be doing targeted interviewing specific leaders. And we'll come back to you in November and share some of what those can look like. So again, I really thank everybody for coming and providing your thoughts. It's not an easy thing to do, but this is what has to happen for a good meaningful community vision. So I really do thank everybody.
Did anybody not get their questions answered, or is there anything additional? Should we run with what we've got?
I have a really big question, and that is the why. Why are we here and what brought us here in the first place? How many developers have approached Grafton or the Carlington School District that said, hey, we're interested in developing your property? Was this us reaching out saying, hey, here's an opportunity, let's explore it? Or are there people out there that are truly interested in coming in and developing 5¼ acres in Grafton?
That's not the driver.
Yeah.
That's not the driver of the issue. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't really have a better answer than that. I mean, it's the school district was interested and interested in selling, and we were looking at what would make that happen in the way that benefits the community the best. And that's what this is about. And so how do we benefit? And I would say, all of those ideas are fantastic, but they also do need to be paid for. And I think that's a big part of this, is keeping that in mind, that we are going to look for grant opportunities. We're meeting with the entities tomorrow to talk about like site development money they can have. And we had numerous developers when we first started talking to people about this who said, well, if I did that site, maybe I'll help with the shopping center as well. You know, maybe there's an investment opportunity there. So there's all kinds of multitude of investment opportunities. If you look at the Crafton strategic plan, for example, for what, I guess, 9 years since that's been done, there's a lot of interest in redeveloping parts of that, and Crafton hasn't significantly invested in that since 1959. And, you know, so getting more investment in that are all things that are possible, and I think, yes, let's keep everything on the table and do what, you know, and get everybody involved. I think absolutely, let's get sponsorships, let's do all that, and we can make the whole area better. And I think that's really the ultimate goal. And that's what I hear from council, that's what I hear from the planning commission, that's what I hear from community members, so.
I just say, again, thank you. I think it's really helpful. Anything else?
That's great.
Okay, thank you.